Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we are going to completely reframe how we understand one of nature's most feared phenomena. When we think of volcanoes, we almost always picture them as these unstoppable forces of sudden, terrifying destruction. But what if I told you that's really only half the story? Today, looking at some incredible new evidence, we're going to see how volcanoes are actually amazing landscapes of human adaptation, protectors of hidden ecosystems, and literally the ultimate preservers of our deep, ancient past. Okay, let's dive right into this with a question that sounds like it belongs straight in a mythology book. Can humans actually live inside volcanoes, or their immediate, highly dangerous landscapes? Well, in the remote Singapan basin of the Philippines, there's an indigenous community known as the People of the Rock. During the rainy season, when massive floods completely overwhelm the valley floor, they don't flee the region. Instead, they move directly into large caves carved right into the surrounding limestone cliffs, and they construct these elevated wooden platforms to serve as their living spaces. Now, when the outside world first found them back in the 1970s, they mislabeled them as an isolated, primitive tribe. But actually, scratch that. This wasn't a primitive lifestyle at all. It was a masterful, totally practical adaptation to their environment. They essentially learned to use this dramatic, rocky landscape to their total advantage. Section 1. Sanctuaries and Secret Worlds. Our relationship with these explosive mountains really hasn't just been about physical survival. Throughout history, volcanoes have acted as towering, protective sanctuaries, safeguarding both sacred human faith and entirely isolated ecosystems. Just think about this. 20,000 feet. Back in 1998, archaeologists climbed nearly that high above sea level directly into the active crater of Peru's Misty volcano. And what they found inside that treacherous crater was an extraordinarily rare Inca ritual site. They uncovered human remains right alongside valuable offerings of gold and silver, all linked to the sacred Capacocha ceremony. To the Inca, mountains weren't just geography, right? They were powerful, sacred beings. By climbing into the crater itself, they likely believed they were communicating directly with that immense power. It just proves that volcanoes were not merely feared, but deeply, deeply revered. And this whole concept of a sanctuary isn't just a human thing. It extends to biology, too. This is Mount Bosavi in Papua New Guinea. Around 200,000 years ago, this volcano collapsed inward, forming a massive 4-kilometer-wide caldera. That collapse created a sheer, impassable natural barrier. When scientists finally managed to enter this crater in 2009, they stepped into a world that had been completely isolated from human contact. We're talking dozens of previously undocumented species, including a giant woolly rat literally the size of a house cat. And honestly, the most amazing part? These animals showed almost no fear of humans, proving that this volcanic fortress had successfully shielded a secret world for hundreds of thousands of years. Section 2. Preserved in the ash. So we've seen volcanoes as homes and fortresses, but perhaps their absolute most profound role is acting as the ultimate preservers of the ancient past. They capture these fleeting, fragile moments in time that otherwise would have just been lost forever. 3.6 million years. That is how long ago volcanic ash settled across a landscape in Tanzania. It was dampened by rain, and as the surface hardened, our early ancestors, specifically Australopithecus afarensis, walked right across it. Their footprints were then rapidly buried and protected by additional layers of ash. When Mary Leakey's team discovered these tracks in 1976, it was a real game changer. It changed paleoanthropology forever. Because unlike fossilized bones, which, really just show us anatomy, this damp volcanic ash captured a literal moment of human behavior, a brief, ancient journey preserved perfectly in the earth. Section 3. Pompeii, the 18-hour window. And this brilliantly illustrates why, to really understand this preserving power, we have to rethink the most famous volcanic eruption in human history. The myth that we all grew up with is that Pompeii was this instant, out-of-nowhere catastrophe where citizens were just instantaneously frozen in place without any warning whatsoever. But the reality is completely different. New evidence reveals this was an agonizing 18-hour unfolding event. It wasn't an instant flash, it was a ticking clock that offered a crucial window of time, forcing people to make incredibly difficult choices under immense, unimaginable pressure. Let's walk through exactly how that ticking clock timeline played out. At 1 p.m., the ground tremors began. Now, residents actually stayed relatively calm at first, mostly because they had lived through earthquakes before. This wasn't an entirely new experience for them. But by mid-afternoon, the explosion hit, sending this towering column of ash and pumice high into the sky. By evening, day literally turned to night, and ash was falling like snow. Footprints and wagon tracks prove that during this sheer chaos, many people actively attempted to flee, while others chose to stay behind to protect their homes. But the true devastation didn't actually arrive until the final phase. So the crucial point here is understanding what actually ended Pompeii. It wasn't just falling debris. The true danger came from pyroclastic surges. These are fast-moving, incredibly hot waves of volcanic gases and ash that just engulf everything in their path. Based on scientific studies from 2023, researchers found undeniable signs of extreme heat exposure. These surges flowed down the volcano at astonishing speeds, overtaking entire neighborhoods in mere seconds. This was an incredibly intense environment of rapid, extreme heat, capturing people not as lifeless statues, but right in the middle of their final rapid actions. Section 4. Echoes of Resilience. Let's bring this vast, terrifying scale down to a deeply human level for a second. Try to imagine the micro-narratives here, the real-time decisions made by everyday people caught in a totally unimaginable situation. In the newly excavated Reggio V district, which is a previously untouched area of Pompeii, archaeologists uncovered 2 individuals trapped in a narrow passageway. It was possibly a household servant and a companion, and right near them, a small box filled with charms, jewelry, and protective tokens. It is such a powerful, heartbreaking story. They were fleeing together, trying to navigate this terrifying darkness, literally clinging to physical objects of hope and protection in a time of total uncertainty. And the data we're extracting today makes these stories even more poignant. Modern DNA testing on a man found in the House of the Golden Bracelet shows he actually shares genetic markers with another person located far away in the city. It strongly hints at separated family members desperately trying to reunite in the dark. And, it wasn't just humans. Archaeologists found the remains of Roman guard dogs still in their courtyards. These loyal animals weren't just pets, they were trained early warning systems that would bark to signal earthquakes. Tragically, many were unable to escape, remaining faithful guardians to the very end. Perhaps the most emotional discovery of all is a simple message scratched quickly into a wall in one of the homes. It just says, "Friends, flee." It was a desperate warning, maybe shared a little too late, but it proves beyond a doubt that even amidst blinding ash and terrifying tremors, the people of Pompeii didn't just panic selfishly. They actively reached out, they tried to help, and they tried to warn each other. And thankfully, some of those warnings worked. Yes, contrary to popular belief, some residents absolutely did survive the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Historical records and tomb inscriptions show that survivors successfully fled and rebuilt vibrant new lives in nearby cities like Naples and Puteoli. One survivor, a woman named Vitalia, even commissioned a temple in her new home, a beautiful tribute to the world she lost. And remarkably, preserved scrolls found in the Villa of the Papyri were written by people who witnessed this disaster, choosing to record their reflections on natural forces and the absolute undeniable resilience of humanity. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that the famous plaster casts of Pompeii are not fictional carved statues. When the bodies decayed, they left hollow spaces in the hardened ash. By pouring plaster into those exact spaces, archaeologists captured real people mid-action. And today, using modern 3D scanning, researchers are actually reconstructing these poses to reveal their true facial expressions. We can literally see mouths open calling out, bodies turned toward loved ones. We are looking directly into the faces of our ancient counterparts, reacting to the total unknown. And we are nowhere near done. Modern technology is completely rewriting the history of this site at lightning speed. Scientists are flying drones to map the surface, utilizing ground-penetrating radar to find hidden structures without lifting a single shovel, and using AI-powered imaging to analyze all this data. Entire new streets, villas, and public spaces that haven't seen sunlight in 2 millennia are being mapped out right now as we speak. We are only just beginning to uncover the true scope of this vibrant community. Which leaves us with a truly provocative thought to end our explainer today. We've seen that volcanic ash has the unparalleled power to perfectly preserve 3.6 million-year-old footsteps and the tragic, fleeting emotions of an entire Roman city. So it really forces us to ask, what else is down there? Could there be evidence of advanced, forgotten worlds that survived global cataclysms, existing before our known flood myths even began, just waiting silently beneath layers of ash to rewrite human history all over again? Thank you so much for joining me to explore the astonishing reality of life in the shadows of volcanoes. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and I'll see you next time.